racers and landscapes. Nothing's off limits. What's up everyone, my name's Kyle and welcome to episode number 2. If you haven't seen episode number 1, go check that out. If you're new here, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the like button. It really helps with the algorithm and pushes this video out to more people that are similar minded like us. In the last video, we tore apart the engine and prepped the frame for fabrication. As I had mentioned in the last episode, we're gonna be welding on the rear loop. I picked up the rear loop from Diamond City Cycles. They have a great selection of parts. Just make sure that you select the loop for the correct CC bike. When you're welding on the rear loop, it's important to slug the frame. The reason you want to do this is for safety. It just adds a little bit more strength in between the weld, and it creates a solid connection from the existing frame to the rear loop. For most of my bikes, it's pretty typical for me to put the rear wheel in the center of the axle blocks, and I measure a straight line straight to the top, and that's where I end my seat. This may be a little bit too short for someone that wants to carry a passenger. It's all going to be dependent on your use of the bike. Once I have my measurement, I will then cut off the excess material. Remember to check twice. You don't want to cut it too short. Trust me, I've done it a couple times. Once it's cut, everything gets cleaned up and fitted to the frame. When everything looks good and straight, it's time to move on to welding. All right, so the engine's back from the vapor blaster and the parts came out absolutely amazing. We're gonna come back to the engine in a little bit, but for now, check out how good this stuff came out. I've actually been doing a lot of reading on some racing forums about these CB550s, and a lot of people have suggested that I lighten and balance the crank. I need to pull the rods off so that I can send it out. Now the wear on this actually looks pretty decent. It's not too bad. There's no scoring. There's nothing that I can feel with my fingernail. But I'll probably end up replacing these anyways because there's just a little bit more wear than I would want to put back into the engine, especially on this top one. If you see, it's not really wearing uniformly. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later. But for now, it's gonna go in here. Now I've pre-loosened these, so don't expect them to come off this easy. A little bit of tap. These things have been sitting on there for probably 40 years. Ooh, see, that one's not good. So if you look, you see that scoring in there? Luckily, I pulled these apart. It looks like I will be replacing the rod bearings for sure. See, there must have been some particles that went through this engine, because on the crankshaft itself, you have these oil galleys, and that's what provides the shells with lubrication. Now, if you break a clutch fiber or you get some metal shavings that runs through the oil system, then you get things like this, and it's hard to catch on some, but yeah, anytime metal goes through the engine, you're gonna get some scoring. So good thing I checked on these. I'm in sort of a parts limbo right now as I'm waiting for things to show up, and I thought it was a great time to talk about how I put together my build sheets. This is what I consider the first step in the design phase of building a motorcycle. A brainstorming of the components that I'm going to use and ultimately build around. Ordering and finding parts, especially for some of these older motorcycles, is not as straightforward as you think. A concise and easy to follow build sheet really helps to keep track of progress, parts, and budgeting. When it comes to finding parts online, there's plenty of websites, but my favorite is Dime City Cycles. I've been a longtime customer of Dime City Cycles, and they've always had a great part selection along with some amazing customer service. These guys are the real deal, and they build motorcycles themselves. Dime City Cycles has been kind enough to sponsor this build, and I'm extremely excited to build this bike with them. In fact, I've actually changed the concept of my original idea of building a street tracker, going for more of a race-ready track bike overnight. Parts like a GSXR front end, some CR26 Cayenne carburetors, Öhlins race shocks, a plethora of frame modifications to stiffen up the chassis so that I can run Dunlop race slicks, and full spec race engine work, which I think I'm the most excited about, are all gonna be featured on this build. Oh yeah, and I forgot, race fuel. I'm extremely excited, and I hope you are too, but let's get into it. Time looking at bike blogs. It's not necessarily to steal ideas from other builders, but to spark inspiration on the parts and the things that I want to do in my build. I also spend a lot of time on the single overhead cams forum. There's a lot of old school road racers on here, and they have infinite knowledge of these old motorcycles. I'll compile a list of information that I think is going to be useful for me when I put this bike back together. From here, I like to visually lay out all of the components and categories of this motorcycle. And I can look at this and put together a build sheet with pretty high accuracy on the parts that I'm going to need. And finally, this is the build sheet. As you can see, the categories on the left, a brief description of the part, the source at which it comes from, the SKU, the quantity, the price, and the status. So if I've ordered it and if I've received it. This is great for tracking the progress of parts because there's so many components that can get lost. At least you know it's in the garage. From here, I can click on the link, add it to the cart, and we are off. This build sheet is available for download in the description. All I ask, you subscribe to this channel and like this video. It helps with the algorithm quite a bit, and it pushes it out to more like-minded people like us. So that's episode number 2, and I'll definitely have a lot more to talk about and work on when these parts start showing up. I really want to take a moment to thank Dime City Cycles for sponsoring this build and all of the new subscribers that I've gained over the last couple weeks. If you're new here, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, the like button, and the bell icon so that you're notified when episode number 3 drops. I'm going to try to drop an episode each month and keep the video quality pretty high. But that's it for today, and I will see you next time.